In this video, we're going to talk about the best Malign Portents short stories regarding death factions.
Okay.
Welcome, more gamers. My name is Doug with 2+ Stuff, and recently I put out a video talking about some of the Malign Portents short stories, particularly just the one that was released this week. And people were really positive about wanting to review these things because not everyone has time or remembers to go check them out, and then it's like a lot of reading that builds up. So they want to talk about them, but not consistently in a way that they go to the site all the time. So we're going to do that. We're going to talk about the ones that I missed basically by not covering them earlier, and there's a lot of them, guys. If you are looking for some great short stories to add color and kind of define Age of Sigmar and you don't want to pay for a black library book, totally get it, they're not cheap. Head over to the Malign Portents site, check out the stories tab, and there's a whole bunch of short stories there. By way of kind of catching up, I want to go ahead and we're going to be picking various factions, big players in Malign Portents, and covering like the best stories I think exemplify them. The ones that really like bring out the character of certain factions. And so we're going to start with kind of death today. Which I think is fitting. It's kind of Malign Portents' thing as death rises. And we're going to talk about 4 in particular. And those are the Offer, the Crimson Connoisseur. What's this one called? Time of Plenty and Lightning in a Bottle. These are ones I have read all the stories. These are my favorite ones that have to do with death. There are more. So I want to start off, and we'll pan over here to the actual website here. Okay, if you're not familiar with the Malign Portents website, they all have just beautiful artwork throughout the thing, and that's really awesome. I'm really glad to do that. So going down here, and what this really is the story, it's just a snippet of a battle that we get. There are some free guild people that are bracing a giant door, like a fortification to part of the city. And there's their leader guys yelling at them like, brace the dang door, like trying to get them, get it together, fortify our position, death's overrunning us. And what we see throughout the story is that flesh eater courts are invading the city. This is not under Nagash's leadership. They're just random, like a flesh eater, I don't know, tribe, house, whatever you'd call them, descends upon this city of order. And they're trying to defend themselves from it. And they're just little ghouls are crawling over the walls and all over stuff. So they're trying to mount a sizable defense against kind of this ongoing wave of ghouls. And these guys are starting to freak out. Holy crap, we're not going to make it. They're starting to despair. And all of a sudden, this massive lightning storm comes up above them. And from above, a little piece of artwork there, I love it. Oh, yeah, the background, flesh quartz. From above, the Anvils of Heldenhammer, one of the Stormcast Eternal Chambers, drops down. These are the guys with the black armor and gold trim, looking super mean. And they immediately start kicking teeth. They start thrashing around. I think most of them have hammers, just absolutely slicing down flesh eater courts. And the order guys, the free guild dudes, are like, yeah, this is it. Justice is at hand. Sigmar has saved us. It's going to be awesome. They start kind of redoubling their efforts. And then something starts happening. And then as they start seeing lightning going back up to the sky. And as this starts to happen, this kind of transition happens in the free guild people where they're like, oh, wait, what is going on over there? Are they sending more reinforcements? I feel like we have enough. And they're realizing that this is Stormcast Eternals being struck down. And then this kind of sense of dread really starts to slowly dawn upon them where they're like, oh, I thought these guys were like immortal. Wait, I thought these guys were like, could kill 1,000 ghouls or whatever like that. But the Stormcasts are just getting swarmed and it's just not possible. And I love this little section here. It's just kind of well written and really, frankly spaced when it comes to how the article looks. Flash, another torn limb from limb by corpses. Flash, another. So it gives you that sense of like this unit drops down, their hope immediately bursts at the seams, and now as they're kind of seeing the battle progress, even with everyone fighting their best, the horde is just too good. And so they start kind of falling apart. And so seeing the last guy, the leader of the unit, swing with his double, I'm assuming he's a grand hammer, which never hits in the actual game, by the way, so I don't know why it would hit in the story. Guy cannot kill all the flesh eater courts around him, and ultimately the last Stormcast beams up back to Azir. All the flesh eaters turn and look at the guild guys, and the ending of it is the end came quickly after that for Sergeant Ulfrin and his men, But of it, the sergeant knew little. By the time the doors crashed down, he had already gone quite mad. If you know anything about Flesh Eater Courts, let me pan back to me. We talked about it in their lore video, where their madness is infectious, and it just kind of engulfs sentience around them. People just kind of go crazy, and then they, if you're not familiar, Flesh Eater Courts perceive themselves to be grand, kind of what we would know as Bretonnians from the old world, very like traditional medieval times. Everything is nice and clean, and they have religious wars, and everything's just nice and kind of formal, you know what I mean? And so when they start invading someone and that people they're hurting crack, they instantly become part of that same madness. It's that same collective, I don't know, insanity, right? And so that's kind of cool. This is a story of a defense where hope was raised and then crushed, and then ultimately madness took over. So I thought that was a really great one. On that note, I do want to talk about the next story, which is also a Flesh Eater Courts one. They got a lot of love this time, and that is Time of Plenty. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is a lovely, beautiful, well-spoken speech by High King, let me pronounce this, Atheldade. And he is wearing silk ribbons, nice thing, got a gold chalice in his hand. He's having this huge banquet with all his people, just feasting and having laughs and murmuring to one another and all enjoying themselves. And he gives this glorious speech. Let me scroll down to that. Kinsmen, gentle dames, I beg of you for one moment, give me your eyes. And he goes on this nice tirade about how great we are. We're going to conquer our enemies, provide for our families, make the mortal realms, amazing again. Almost said great again. And then this part in italics, which I want to highlight here, is the truth. And this is often when you see stories that involve Flesh Eater Courts. They often do this where the normal text is what they perceive, and the italicized text is what's actually happening. So you get this dichotomy in every story. And if you read this one, there's like crows. Basically, there's just a huge pit of dead bodies, and all these Flesh Eater Courts are around there just ripping flesh from bones of humans they killed before. And one of them, who has like some ragged clothes draped over him, gets up, he holds a bone in the sky, and that's his chalice, and starts going blah, 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 and just starts murmuring and being absolutely mad. But in their kind of psychosis, the things that happen that are not in italics is what's happening to them. So grandiose speeches, everything's worn with splendor. There's, there's an air of authority and prestige about them. And so I think if you are into Flesh Eater Courts at all, or want to ally them into an army, this is a fantastic story. And basically, that's kind of the point of it. It's just to give you more insight into their madness and perception of reality versus what they actually are. And it's really quite sad. We talked about that in their lore video, but I love, they talked about this a little bit in Nagash Undying King, where there's a fight scene where there's a ghoul king who's fighting someone, and he pulls out his beautiful broadsword and strikes the guy down, but really he's like stabbing him with a bone, like a femur. And so I don't know, it's just cool. I think the idea of you and your enemy having completely different perceptions of what's going on, but the same events are still happening, I think is really interesting. So go check that story out. We'll move along to the Crimson Connoisseur. Now this one is one of the more interesting ones. Let me pause back here. If you're looking for cool stories that have to do with kind of really getting involved in the mortal realms, as a narrative tool, one of the best things you can do is read letters from people in those stories. And so there are a few Malign Portents stories that are letters written to other characters, but rather than just kind of being a third-person, viewer of what's happening, you get to be the receiving end of that letter, and it's very interesting. So that's what this is. What we're really seeing here is there is a vampire in an Order city who is infiltrating. There's a vampire who is infiltrating an Order city, I should say. She kind of cooed and got the attention of one of the most rich people in the city. Got him under her control, and so now she has a puppet. And all this is happening at the direct orders of Neferata. Now, Neferata is one of the most prolific death characters in the range. And so her thing really is subterfuge, it's information wars, it's power, it's control. And so it makes perfect sense for her to have someone go kind of covert and, we'll say, twist things from the inside of an Order city. And really, that's kind of the crux of the letter. She kind of goes over some ways, the information she can get, like, hey, here's how you can get in the city's wardens. You can get in there. You can bring deaf people through there. Here's how you can infect Hammerhall. She goes over some various districts in the city that are easy to attack. What we're looking at fundamentally is how Neferata wages war. And it's a long game, right? You infiltrate, you find weaknesses, and then when you strike, there's no defense against it. And so this just added, I think, a lot of character to Neferata and the way that she does combat, and I really appreciate it. I wish there was some way, maybe in a narrative situation or like through a certain battle plan, where you could basically, your opponent starts at a disadvantage because you infiltrated them. If you're playing, what is it called, like the fortifications, I can't think of the name. When you build with fortresses, it's in the GHB 2017. That would be a really cool thing where you could kind of have a character go in and kind of sabotage things. I think it'd be very scaveny too. So I think that would be awesome. The reason I'm bringing that one up is it's very important, I think, to see, like, narrative speaking, you get an appreciation for who Neferata is by the way people talk to her. And so if you read that letter and you see how this person who's directly underneath her, doing her will, talks to her, you get a better idea of who Neferata is. And I think that's important. Now we go to my personal favorite. And this is actually one of my favorites I talked about in the Free People's one. It's called The Offer. It's actually one of the first Malign Portents stories that we had. It came out in that first month. And in this one, it is another letter from one character to another that we get to read. And it is from a basically lieutenant or leader of a detachment of free peoples who was sent out to go guard a realm gate. And this is the one where they have a cog fort. It is literally a mobile fortification. We don't know much about it. We'd love to see a model for it. That would be the greatest thing in the whole wide world. But he writes this letter from this lieutenant going back to his general about these events that have transpired. The first night, nothing happens. Just an ominously quiet night. Second night, same thing. And third night, this kind of ghastly image appears. They're about a day's ride away from this rum gate they're headed towards. And things are getting kind of strange. Like where there should be sound, there's none. You know, that kind of ominous, there's no birds making noise kind of thing. So he sends riders ahead. Right? He puts the cog fort in the ground, sends riders ahead, go investigate what's going on. All of a sudden, in the middle of the night, the guard starts screaming. And he runs out there to go see what's going on, thinking something happened to the scouts. They're coming back, and people are like, oh my god. What happened is the scouts didn't come back, but this big black like apparition appears above them, and it starts speaking to them. It's a whisper that every single person hears, and I'll transfer back here. Says, Nagash claims these lands, as he claims all lands, as death shall always have its due. The dark gale rises. I offer you one chance. Give yourselves over willingly. Serve and endure, or refuse and die. And I think that's the most BA line. I have no confirmation that that's Arcan the Black, but we're going to see later I think it is. The captain says, I want you to know that I refused immediately. There was no like taint of chaos or corruption within my ranks. I'm so glad I did. And what happens immediately is stuff starts going very, very bad. When the offer is rejected, basically the metal that the cog fort is made of begins to rust. And sections of the actual fortification age at different rates. For part of it, it's like people just decay and they're all of a sudden 90 years old when they used to be 30. Other parts are fine. Basically, the boilers in the thing get rusted shut. And so now they have this problem. They have two choices, really. They can run away, like evacuate the fort, or they can stand and defend it. They're about a mile away from their target destination. And they didn't really have much of a choice because, well, when they started to have these discussions about leaving, that's when the Death Army started to come. Skeletal hands started rising from the ground and clawing at the bottom of the fort. Well, now running away is impossible. It's just he literally says there's a moat of skeletal hands clawing for you around the thing. So you can't run away. all of a sudden everyone universally starts aging, right? This is the, I believe it's Hand of Dust spell that Arcan has. It's very reminiscent of that. We have no real confirmation that it's Arcan, but it's very reminiscent. And so everyone starts aging, and so he's writing this. We don't know this until the end. He's writing this as an old man when he used to be young like a day ago. And at some point he says, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. As a dying man's confession, I cried out and begged for mercy. And the voice, that same mysterious whisper in your mind, says, the time for willing service has passed. Meaning, this is awesome, you're no good to me anymore with your willpower. I'm going to kill you, resurrect your body as a skeleton warrior, and I'll have my due either way. And all of a sudden it didn't matter because willpower is optional in Nagash's army. And I love this story because it paints a really great picture, one, of free people. That they have technology in use that we haven't seen yet. What that's going to look like, I would love to play as a cog for it. Like, I think that would just look so cool. And that gives a great flavor to them. In addition, when we're talking about death stuff, which is kind of the point of the video, I love the fact that he offered them, right, the whole thing's called the offer, a chance to serve willingly, possibly in a role kind of like Flesh Eater Courts, where you're separate, but you get to work with us. When the offer was refused, there was no disappointment. He's going to get what he wants. It's just that now willing service has passed, and now you will be subjugated to Nagash. And I just thought that was like so... It's so much what death is about, right? Like, he's going to get what he wants. The question is, are you going to do it willingly or are you not? Are you going to stand for your principles or are you just going to give in? And so I think putting characters in that kind of situation is far more fascinating, especially with the kind of the magnitude of abilities that death is supposed to have in these books. I think it's a lot of fun. So let me pan back here. And those are my 4 stories. I just wanted to kind of have a nice little shot of the in the end. I want to hear your thoughts. Do you have stories in the Malign Portents ones that you'd like to hear? Right now, the ones that I'm really focused on covering are kind of your big players. I want to do one over the Forces of Order, the ones that have destruction armies in it, because there are a few mentions of destruction armies and those kinds of things. So leave in the comments down below what your favorite Malign Portent story is, and we will definitely tackle that. Now, if you didn't catch the memo last video, I am going to focus a lot on these until the new edition comes out, simply because we know that the new book is going to have consolidated and tweaked lore a little bit, with a new kind of creative vision that the team has over at GW. And so rather than saying things that are going to be invalidated in 4 weeks, I want to talk about things that are awesome and relevant, and these stories are incredible. If you are at all interested in Malign Portent stuff, head over to the site. All these stories are completely free, and just dig in. They're a lot of fun. So thank you guys so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in my next AOS video. Have a great day, and happy wargaming. Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed that video, and I want to introduce you to some awesome folks. These are my patrons over on Patreon, and they make this show possible by their direct support of me to buy battle tomes and Black Library books and all the material I need and the hardware support that I need to make this stuff possible. And if you'd like to join them, go ahead and click over to the Patreon page, to the link in the description down below, and you'll be introduced to a really awesome community of people talking about the hobby, sharing what they're painting. I invite them to be a part of polls to decide what content comes next. I raffle off every battle tome that I review, and we're having some great fun and discussions over there. So go ahead and check it out. Now, if you can't support in that way, that's completely fine. I'm just so glad that you watched this video here today. And if you have an Age of Sigmar lore question, go ahead and click subscribe and leave it in the comments down below. I read every single question and comment. I respond to as many as I possibly can, but I use them all as inspiration for future videos. So go ahead and do that now. And I look forward to seeing you guys on my next Age of Sigmar lore video. Thank you so much for watching, and happy wargaming.